Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Tuesday, December 10th, 2024, and today we're talking weather, saving the daylight, or are we, and naps. So let's do it. All right, I hope everyone's week is off to a good start. Yesterday, host Natalie Lounsbury posted an awesome interview with Ryan Mayer from Cornell, formerly from the Cornell Small Farm Program, about deep compost mulch and no-till and tarps. They did an 8-year study, and this particular interview is wonderful because it goes into some of the complexities of studying soil and farming. This is the study that you will remember I discussed a couple months back, praising the researchers for going out of their way to publish a simplified version of the study in Growing for Market magazine, effectively getting research to the farmers who could use it. And I love that. Absolute, just 100% cheers, applause, all the things. So if you missed that interview, you can find the No-Till Growers Network feed wherever you get podcasts, and it will be on there, or on the No-Till Growers podcast feed here on YouTube, where you can also find the No-Till Market Garden podcast interviews throughout the season. Very cool stuff. So it's December. Surprise. That means all sorts of things in terms of life stuff, especially when you have kids, but it means less gardening in the fields generally and more gardening in the books or spreadsheets or napkins or tattoos or however you do your garden plan. Over the next few weeks, I'm going to start sprinkling in some crop planning stuff, but I want to emphasize sprinkling. What I don't want this daily show to become is dense with information every single day. For one, I'm not sure how long I could even sustain such a thing. It would be like an endless lecture, and that would defeat the purpose of this whole show, the purpose being to just be a nerdy, consistent, fun, but not too heavy hangout with you all. Anyway, yes, we'll start digging into some different planning strategies these next few weeks. But for right now, as the Prince of Segways, I want to talk about a breakthrough in weather forecasting, which could eventually have some effect on planning. But anyway, so when I was just a normal city dwelling person, I cared very little about the weather until the day of. Basically, is it raining? Is it hot? Is it cold? What do I need to know to leave the house or to go on vacation? To my friends and I, when we were kids, drought just meant that we could skateboard over grass at some of our favorite skate spots, which made some of the gaps a lot more fun to skate. It wasn't until I became a farmer that I really ever spent any amount of time studying a forecast and caring about the weather. Now, here's what most of us may not know about forecasts. At a few days out, they are pretty accurate. But as you slip into that 5 to 10 day mark, it becomes basically like 50% accuracy. Farmers, of course, know this, or at least they know it intuitively, but the weather is just profoundly hard to nail down past a few days because of the sheer number of factors involved in weather creation in the atmosphere. Now, to be clear, I do not claim to understand even a small percentage of those factors. This is just the nerd's eye view of all of this, I suppose. But basically, this week I was reading an article about a new breakthrough in AI-generated predictions from a program called GenCast. And it's incredibly accurate out to like 15 days, or at least more accurate than any system to date. And keep in mind, we're still very much in the beginning stages of AI technology, but this new technology is outcompeting some of the best current weather technology 97.2% of the time, according to the researchers. So in our lifetime, we are likely to see incredibly reliable, accurate weather 2 weeks out or more because of these systems. I'd honestly never thought that would happen. I guess I didn't even think it was a possibility, or hadn't even really thought that it would be a thing I would care about. But as a farmer, I'm so used to the shifts in weather that I view the 10-day forecast with a little more than amusement. I never have really considered the idea of the weather being accurate or how that would change things around my farm and life. On the positive side, knowing the weather for the next 2 weeks is very likely to be the actual weather for the next 2 weeks would be quite helpful on the farm, and honestly helpful as a soccer coach. It would be able to better predict severe weather, so communities and farmers would have more time to prepare. Like if you knew a big windstorm was coming, you may secure your tarps and your tunnels a little bit more, or maybe you wouldn't plant certain things. Negatives to this are all the same as all the negatives to AI models. These programs tend to be incredibly energy intensive, and they will put people out of work. which is depressing. And I think as a society, we haven't really wrapped our brains around that very well. Nonetheless, these technologies are coming. We are living in a time of significant and frankly unrelenting technological change, an industrial revolution of sorts that some are calling Industrial Revolution 4.0, which is definitely the dad joke of names. And I'm not sure how to feel about AI and its effects on society, but I also think when new technologies come along that will likely be of some benefit to farmers, it's important to at least point them out or at least look at them and ask, what does it mean? So what does a more accurate forecast mean to you? Do you care? Will it change anything about what you do now or how you plan your time in a week, 2 weeks out? I can imagine setting work and harvest schedules 2 or 3 weeks ahead of time. That would be incredible. But I can also imagine not having any additional time to do such things anyway. Would you plant things differently or hold off knowing there was near guaranteed severe weather coming up in 10 days or so? I know with animal husbandry, maybe you don't move your animals to a low spot, seeing a potential flooding event 12 days out or something, right? I just think that weather has been so laughably inaccurate for so long, and I never assumed it would really be any different. It's kind of wild to think about like what having an accurate forecast that far out means. It's like someone handing you a new tool that does a whole job you never knew could be done. Anyway, let me know your thoughts, and we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll get a Patreon question. BRB. Today's episode of Growers Daily is brought to you by Tilth Soil. Tilth Soil is a worker-owned co-op in Cleveland, Ohio, making NOP-compliant living soils for organic growers. Everything from Tilth is compost-based, and they divert around 4,000 tons of food scraps from landfills each year. I have used Tilth Soil for several years now for my plant starts. I love the results. I get consistent germination and consistent growth, plus excellent customer support. It's a lovably nerdy cast of folks who run Tilth. So start your season with excellent germination and strong transplants. Check out Tilth's pre-sale pricing for the 2025 season at tilthsoil.com. That's tilthsoil.com and click Farmers. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener, are enjoying this podcast and would like to support it, you can do so over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I try to get to questions from everywhere that questions come in, but I will always get to those Patreon questions. Today's question comes from Patreon member Outlier Gardener, and I thought it would be a fun one. They write, quote, "Every time I adjust my clocks for daylight saving time, I can't help but feel frustrated with the system. For example, it's not a savings for me because I just end up having to do my formerly 7 a.m. tasks at 6 a.m. now and adjusting my schedule accordingly. While I understand its historical reasons, I believe it's time to reconsider its relevance today. I often wonder if the disruption it causes is no longer justified by any potential benefits. As a farmer, what are your thoughts?" End quote. This is a great question, and the relevance of the daylight saving debate has been going on, well, since daylight saving was enacted. For those who don't know the historical context, first, it's often assumed that farmers are the reasons that we started using daylight saving to begin with. We are not. It started during World War I with the Germans who changed their clocks to preserve energy, and the Americans followed suit, and it worked. And it allowed folks more time in the evening in the summer to do things they want to do, such as potentially tend victory gardens. Now, most people I know, including myself, who is an intense creature of habit, feel much like Outlier Gardener. Daylight saving is disruptive and obnoxious and throws off well-established routines. And this is backed up by surveys that show something like 63% of people hate changing their clocks. Okay, maybe the survey didn't ask them if they hated it, but that was implied, I think. There are some small studies that show the change in the clock to even have negative health and safety outcomes. So the idea of locking the clocks is quite popular. Funny enough, it was also popular in the 1970s as well. And Nixon even signed a law that effectively locked the clocks on summertime, what we call daylight saving time, as opposed to standard time, which is what we're on now and what we were on before daylight saving was enacted in 1918. Goes that far back. Anyway, it was wildly popular that summer, and then it quickly became wildly unpopular because of how dark the mornings become in the fall when you stay on daylight saving. It was repealed in 1974, meaning that daylight saving was locked by law for a whole cute 10-month period. As a farmer, I can honestly say I sort of prefer standard time in the fall because I like the morning light for harvesting and planting. I've even heard doctors argue that permanent standard time, the one we're in right now in the fall, would be the preferred in terms of our health. Sports industries and other outdoor folks lobby for and argue for the opposite, obviously. The more sunlight in the afternoons, the better for them. And frankly, I do sympathize with them to some extent because I'd like to be able to play and coach soccer with the kids later into the season. But it gets dark here at like 5:20 right now, which, for lack of a better word, boo. But if I can't have more sunlight on both ends of the day in the fall and winter, I guess I'll take my sunlight in the morning. Funny enough, there is even a bill stuck banging around in Congress right now called the Sunshine Protection Act, arguing over this very thing. Like, okay, if we're going to lock the clocks, on which time do we do it? There are pretty reasonable arguments on all sides, including keeping the time change itself and just kind of helping people adjust to it better. Are you ready for my solution? We do one final, somewhat confusing, but ultimately fair half-hour switch, planting ourselves, for a sports reference, on halftime, halfway between daylight saving and standard time. So basically, we spring forward 1/2 hour this spring, and we're done with the time change thing forever, for good. And everybody concedes a little bit and wins a little bit. Our phones and devices all change automatically these days anyway, so it's not like it would be as hard as it used to be when we had to switch manually every clock in our houses, assuming that you read the paper that day or saw it on the news or whatever. Those were the days too, because you had a good excuse to be late to school or work or whatever on Monday because you could always blame it on the time change. It was totally legit excuse. I mean, every time change, someone was unwittingly either really early or really late. Just part of life. I mean, I know Congress is somewhat allergic to compromise anymore, but halfway seems like an easy solution to me. Or just standard time. That's my vote. And frankly, that's been the proposal as well in places like Oregon, where they are trying to stay on standard time. Anyway, did I even answer the question? No idea, but I hope so. I know that for me, I get into habits that are profoundly time sensitive. This entire show requires me to have my time nailed down almost to the minute. So the time change is a little more than a nuisance to me. Does not help me in any fashion. And also, I don't stay up late, so having to go to bed in the bright sunlight of the summer is a bummer as well. So in that way, not only does daylight saving not help this particular farmer, it's actually kind of inconvenient and unhelpful. That's my 2 cents. All right, well, thanks Outlier Gardener and everyone over at patreon.com/no-till-growers, where there are some discount codes still for 2024. So go check those out if you want a break in your seed costs for the spring. Just saying. All right, next up, we nap. Be right back.
I can't let you go, baby. I just want to tell you that. No. Yeah. All of my friends say, girl, you better take care.
All right, so I have a thing for naps. I discovered many years back that I could eat lunch and lay down for anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes and be absolutely refreshed. These are popularly referred to as power naps, or as I call them, absolutely essential to my existence as a human. Yesterday on this show, I was talking about the difficulties of traveling for me and doing events, is that more often than not, I miss out on my nap. Like, I don't have a rider. That is the thing that musicians or whoever demand be supplied to them at every venue, the most famous of which being Van Halen requesting a bowl full of M&Ms with the brown ones picked out. But if I did, it would be a cot in the venue where I could take a 20-minute nap before starting my afternoon sessions or whatever. For me, it is truly night and day the difference in how I feel before the naps and after. There was a point at which I think my wife thought it was a ridiculous idea, the idea of me napping, but now encourages me to take naps for how much better off I am in the afternoons because of them and how much consequently I am worse off in the afternoons if I don't take one. I have a whole nap strategy where I eat lunch, which makes me sleepy, and then I go up and I take my nap. The nap is generally no more than 20 minutes, and I even set my alarm to ensure it doesn't go longer than that, really. If I go much longer than 25 minutes, the nap fails, and I spend the next hour groggy and unmotivated. But if I hit the nap in that sub 20-minute range, I wake up almost like nothing happened. It feels like I hit some sort of reset button in my brain. Sometimes I wake up in 5 minutes or 10 minutes on my own and feel great. Now, some people, like myself, love naps and live off of them, but others do not get anything from naps. it has the opposite effect, leaving them groggy and tired. And of course, there are others still who don't have the privilege of napping, like they can't just stop their job and go nap for 20 minutes. Though I would argue for bosses, and others have argued this as well, that a nap break for some workers might actually improve productivity. So just pointing that out. To be honest, as much as I sometimes loathe owning a business for all the challenges of it, being able to nap is legitimately one of the things that keeps me in the entrepreneurship game. I don't care about making my own rules. I don't care about trying to make some crazy living. I care about taking my own naps and having that freedom. Indeed, going back to the event thing, there have been day-long events in the past where I did my morning talk. We broke for an hour for lunch. I scarfed my lunch down, bolted to my room for a 15-minute nap, and came back and finished the talk. In fact, I would argue with absolutely no evidence that the events where I didn't get to have that nap haven't been quite as good on my end in the presentation. I'm a lesser presenter when I don't get my nap, which is one of the more old man things I've said to date, but I'll own that. I have looked at some of the science, and amazingly, it largely describes exactly what I do as the optimal way to nap, under 30 minutes after lunch. But in terms of health benefits, it's kind of all over the board on naps. One of the things about sleeping and napping, and frankly, human and health sciences in general, is that humans are not monolithic, not in the things we believe or do, but also not in our constitutions. In other words, no two people need to eat exactly the same or sleep exactly the same. Like there are those who say everyone needs 9 hours of sleep every night, but even in a world where that is possible for everyone, it's not necessarily true of everyone either. I couldn't sleep 9 hours in a night if you paid me to do it. I'm physically incapable of staying in bed once I'm awake. It's much more torture than rest, and the science is pretty clear that it is quality and not arbitrary quantity. And it's been that way for me since I graduated from teenagerhood. 9 hours is way too long. So yes, there are some potential health benefits to napping, but maybe not for everyone, in the same way that there are some potential health benefits to sleeping 9 hours, but not necessarily for everyone. Again, quality over quantity. Perhaps for those who do not feel refreshed from a nap, the nap is less beneficial. I also know people for whom the act of getting to sleep itself takes as long as my entire nap lasts, so it's not really an option unless they have an hour to set aside to allow for the actual falling asleep part. So anyway, I wanted to give an ode to napping here, but also give a nod to the fact that it's not for everyone and that you should not feel bad if you can't nap. But also, if you own a business with employees, you should consider offering a little nap option or area for their lunch breaks, where if they so choose, maybe they can doze off for a few and come back even better for the afternoon. Just a thought. Anyway, going to put this episode to bed, and I'm going to do it just like that because I'm a dad. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music and to the team at No Till Growers for their support. Also, huge shouts to the amazing folks who support us through patreon.com/no-till-growers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or if you just sign up in the month of December, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to, our weeklies are back. Alex and Oliver, Maina, Stacy Moorman, probably my favorite name to say, Bill King, Byron Green, Chris Yates, Stephen Smith, and the weeklies have a joiner today, Siri Yedisti. I think I got that one right. This, let's see, what are the weeklies up to today? I think they're all learning how to surf, and Siri Yedisti is clearly their instructor, and they're out in Florida because I love Florida. They're out in Florida, and they're all having a pretty good time. But then big swell comes in, and it's from Godzilla coming up in the middle of the ocean. They don't know that. They just see the big waves. But that doesn't matter. It's a different story anyway. And anyway, these giant waves come in, and Siri Yedisti is such a pro that they surf out and they are able to rescue all of the weeklies, but also give them really good lessons, and everybody gets some good video. It goes up on their Instagram, and some like 100-foot waves, and Siri Yedisti's out there like picking people up out of the waves and surfing, and everybody has a good time, and ultimately improves at their surfing skills. And then Godzilla's there in the middle of the ocean wreaking havoc, but it doesn't really matter because it's all about incremental improvement. Yeah, an opportunity. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.